Democrats will not reverse the Trump-era tax cuts for the wealthy, though they pretended at the time that they found those tax cuts for the rich objectionable. And Joe Biden himself even campaigned on the very idea of reversing Donald Trump's tax cuts for the rich. Now, one Democrat who was too cowardly to identify themselves while speaking to The Hill said this. Let me start off by saying that when it comes to how billionaires have been performing financially during this pandemic, new data indicates that billions have seen their collective wealth grow by $1.3 billion since the deadly pandemic began last year. It's important to understand that statistic. It's important to know about that because every time a Democrat tells you they cannot reverse Trump's tax cuts, because of the pandemic, because we're in such a terrible economic situation, understand that they are lying to you because the quote unquote job creators, the people that they've given the tax cuts to in the past are the very people who have done very well for themselves during this pandemic. In fact, America's 664 billionaires now have a combined net worth of $4.2 trillion, a figure that stands in staggering contrast to the economic pain being felt by countless families across the United States as joblessness, uninsurance, and hunger remain sky high. Now I want to get to a cowardly Democrat who didn't want to reveal his or her name while speaking to The Hill when expressing their concern about reversing Trump-era tax cuts. This person told The Hill this: I think we should not be raising taxes. People would accept the corporate tax raised a few points, but beyond that, you're going to have problems, especially in the middle of an economic crisis. Now, there's a very good reason why this person did not want to go on the record and publicly say this while revealing his or her name. It's because this ideology, this take on Trump-era tax cuts is very unpopular. Right, but you hear similar statements being made by people in leadership positions in the House of Representatives, including House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal, who said this, expressed concern that attaching tax increases to the infrastructure bill that Democratic leaders plan to move could send Republicans and Democrats into their corners, as if they're not already into their corners, as if that excuse is really gonna play well with people who actually pay attention to their disgusting, cowardly, selfish behavior in Congress. And I have more for you, Cenk, but why don't you jump in?
Okay, so first of all, you're right. That line about sending them to their corners is hilarious. What votes have you gotten from Republicans on policy initiatives so far? My latest count is 0. And so if you think the Republicans are in your corner or near you, you're on a different planet, brother. And look, even the most moderate proposals by guys like Senator Romney are way out there. Some are like, look, we found one that we told you about earlier in the week where we're like, okay, this one's bad, but not awful. Like, and there are some actually interesting and good parts of it, right? Other than that one on childcare, they're all super right wing. So if we meet in the middle between their super right wing proposals and the Democrats' moderate proposals, we'll have a right wing proposal. Why? Can anyone explain to me why the Democrats, who have complete control over Washington, refuse to act on every single issue? Anna, you misspoke by accident. You said $1.3 billion is how much the billionaires had increased their wealth during the pandemic. Of course, it's $1.3 trillion. 1.3.
Yes, my bad.
Trillion dollars. So don't tell me it's gonna slow down the economy to take away an extra $1 billion here or there from Bezos. I can guarantee you he's not gonna miss it. He might get all emotional about it, like, oh my God, and Leon Cooperman might come back on CNBC and cry a river and stuff. What will I ever do with the 184 billion I have left? Oh, shut up already. So look, Look, we have to strike the right balance. It's not a matter of eating the rich. It's not a matter of envy, and I hate that stuff, right? But saying that they don't have enough money is deeply insulting and totally counterfactual and an alternate reality. So let me just real quick, during the pandemic, Bezos and Musk respectively, raised their wealth by 76.3 billion and 158 billion. That's just two guys. Zuckerberg raised his wealth, and this is all in 1 year, just 1 year, raised his wealth by $41 billion. So, I mean, the Koch brothers robbed and stole and bought off politicians and did every dirty trick in the book to get to 41 billion over their lifetimes after their dad had given them $500 million to begin with. But these billionaires, their wealth is accumulating at insane levels while our general population wealth is decreasing, is getting hammered. And then they say, oh, no, now is not the time to raise taxes on the rich. It's never time in Washington, never. Get real.
Right, and look, this story is about Democratic lawmakers who had pretended as though they found Trump's tax cuts for the rich objectionable. And now they're totally backing off of their own campaign promises and their own party messaging in terms of reversing those tax cuts. But make no mistake, Republicans are obviously incredibly awful when it comes to this type of policy because of course they support tax cuts for the rich. They always have. That's been part of their platform since as long as I can remember. But one thing that's really interesting about this moment is how they have this conflicting message. On one hand, in regard to passing Biden's $1.9 trillion economic relief plan, you'll get Republican senators like Senator Kennedy arguing that, what do you mean? The economy is doing so well. We don't need to do anything, right? I mean, he had this line of questioning for the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, just recently. And he's like, GDP's doing great. We don't need to pass COVID relief. You agree with me, right? But then at the same time, when it comes to, raising taxes, just reversing the tax cuts for the rich that Trump implemented, they'll argue, no, the economy is actually really, really bad. And if we do this, if we raise taxes, it's really gonna hurt people in being able to create jobs. By the way, I mean, the analysis is in, we already expected this. Cutting the taxes for the wealthy did not lead to more job creation. It actually did the opposite. We had more situations where companies consolidated and then ended up laying off a bunch of workers. And that was something that was actually reported by Jonathan Larson over at TYT Investigates. But let's get back to Democrats because Joe Manchin continues to be a problem. And so Senator Joe Manchin told The Hill in early January, for instance, that it would be, quote, ridiculous to repeal the Trump tax cuts while the COVID-19 pandemic is still a burden on the economy. And Congress has a lot of other legislative priorities on its plate, such as addressing the need for more vaccines. Now, allegedly on Tuesday, he backed off of that statement a little bit, saying that everything's open for discussion. But there are more Democratic lawmakers, people like Senator John Tester, another centrist this week, warned that lawmakers need to be careful about raising taxes when the real unemployment rate is estimated to be as high as 10%. And then he also says, I think there are some loopholes in the code that could be cut out. I don't know that you want to do it right now.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it right now.
Yeah. Every time Republicans get in office, their very first priority is tax cuts for the rich, and they do it immediately. Every time Democrats get in office, they go, not right now. We can't reinstate, and we can't reinstate it all the way. And by the way, we're going to make them permanent. But no campaign promises. No, never. Look, I'm going to go to one of our members here. Theodore Gaddis wrote it in the member section. Is there any campaign promise that Biden hasn't made noises about not being able to complete during his first 100 days while his political capital is at its highest? So this is the same thing Obama did. Well, I can't do everything at once. I mean, I got to do things one thing at a time. So I only have time for one thing in the first 100 days. Actually, the first year. Oh, the second year is an election year, so we can't get anything done. So we're only going to really do one thing, right? And here in this case, they're saying COVID relief, kind of, So look, if Trump hadn't said that he won the election, which is the lie of the year, the lie of the decade, the lie of the century, then we would be having a real conversation about what's the lie of the year. Is it the Democrats saying that they do $2,000 checks for everyone? So they're doing $1,400, but even if you give them that, hey, that's $2,000 overall, it's not for everyone now. Now they've negotiated it down so that if you're 50,000 or over, likely you won't get anything, okay? So that's a giant lie. $15 minimum wage, totally kidding. Not gonna do it at all. They're trying to kill it right now. That's later in the show. Giant lie, and it's so easy. Paid sick leave, nothing. Raising taxes on the rich to get it back to where it was pre-Trump. They never even planned to do that ever. It was always a lie. It was always a lie. How many times are these Democrats going to lie and then think like, oh gee, I don't know why we lost the next election. Oh, but Biden's not talking about the parliamentarian. The parliamentarian. As if the parliamentarian is president, as if Joe Manchin is president. Joe Biden, who's president, you or Manchin? If it's Manchin, let's go talk to that guy every day, because you're obviously abdicating your responsibility. You're never gonna raise taxes on the rich. You're all goddamn liars. You work for the rich. Keep it real.
Now we do have a poll on this, and so we actually do not have a poll on this. My bad. It's for the minimum wage. My bad. But I do want to add one more thing to this, and it really has to do with some of the influencing factors behind the scenes, which I don't think ever really gets talked about. Now, Cenk, you talk about money in politics all the time, and that is certainly a giant influencing factor. There's no question. But we also often forget that many of these lawmakers are tremendously wealthy themselves. You think they want to increase things like the capital gains tax? You think that they want to do financial policies that would actually force them to pay more in taxes? So this is data from opensecrets.org based on 2019 financial filings that the House of Representatives and the Senate has to file. And so if you take a look at how much money these people are worth, and it's general ballpark, they might actually be worth more. But you take a look at that, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in net worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. This is for the House of Representatives. You move over to the Senate, and you see the exact same thing. Now, clearly, Republican senators and Republican members of the House tend to be a little more wealthier, but you have some Democrats in there as well. And so if you're worth, I mean, in this case with Rick Scott, from Florida, he's in the Senate, he's worth more than $240 million. That is his net worth. These are not people who have any interest in ensuring that wealthy people pay their fair share. There's a giant conflict of interest of people this wealthy serving in Congress in the first place. They're not gonna look out for you. They don't have your best interests at heart, and they will change their messaging depending on what the policy is to ensure that they don't actually have to do right by you and carry out what's in your best interests.
Yeah, I'm so tired of all of this. It's all this fake drama. They're all in on the game, Republicans and Democrats, especially on the taxes. They're all incredibly wealthy. They're all screwing us. You know how Rick Scott made his fortune? By committing the largest Medicare fraud in American history. That's a fact, you could look it up. And Democrats have lost to him like half a dozen times. The most incompetent loser party you've ever seen. The guy's an outright criminal. The biggest bank robbery in a sense of Medicare, of our taxpayer money. And then he takes that wealth and then he buys himself a Senate seat. And then he says, I got a great idea. I'll keep my taxes low. So that way I don't have to give back any of the money I stole from you. So it's a bunch of thugs and criminals that run this country. And the Democrats, we're all so tired of your lies. So here, I'll go to our members again. Effecto said, just remember, this isn't the first time that Biden went behind the backs of voters to make tax cuts permanent. He secretly cut a deal to make the Bush era tax cuts permanent. That's absolutely true. You could look that up too. And so is Biden really gonna raise taxes to back to where they were like he promised? No way. No way he's gonna do that. The donors run Washington. And look, I'll say one last time in this story. Where else in the media do you see the truth? Where else do you see them talking about broken promises? By the way, every one of these proposals is overwhelmingly popular in the country. Where else do you see them saying, hey, they're all rich, and all their donors are all rich, and that's why they constantly cut their taxes and never increase them? Do you ever see that anywhere else in the media? It's because you think the media can't figure it out. They can't read the donor list. Either they're incredibly incompetent or they're part of this corrupt system. So no, I got news for you. They're not gonna increase those taxes anywhere near where they were, if they ever get to it at all. And it's a yet another broken promise by Democrats. Then they wonder why they get their asses handed to them on a regular basis.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges, You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.